Now, in the same way, I'd like you to talk for just a minute to parents, because uh, one of the things I talk about and write about is that parents are kind of on an uncharted journey. You stated that about your mom, and that when you were young, she didn't really know about autism that much, and that there wasn't that much information available. And your mom obviously had to do a lot of learning throughout your younger years. So, first of all, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Tell me what your mom did looking back that was really helpful for you. And then tell me what other parents can do to help their children.
My mother was just the complete epitome of peace, patience, and love, no matter what. She always believed in me. She always knew that deep down that I would progress and flourish throughout my life and go to some very new and exciting places. And she knew I had the intellect. She knew I had the talent. That if I applied myself appropriately, that I would go on to do good things. And I hope that I've made her proud, and that I have. And the one piece of advice I give, and it doesn't matter what interview it is, it doesn't matter what TV station or radio station or whoever it may be that I actually talk to, the one piece of advice that I would give, and I'll start with a statement before the piece of advice. And I have never met a parent who believed their child to be autistic and been wrong. Never, ever. I've never had that. Even whenever my mum got a bit more knowledge about what being autistic was, but it was Asperger's syndrome at that time. Being autistic, something that I identify with now. And if a parent believes their child to be autistic, and I ask this to every group, I do a question and answer session at the end, but I always make sure to ask a question of my own, and that is, I ask the particular group who's hosting me there to speak to their group members. I always ask them, if this was 25 years ago, and my mother was at home on her own, we were waiting on a diagnosis, which didn't come for 7 or 8 years afterward. Would you accept us? Would you take us in? And every single group have said yes, that they would. I've yet to come across a charitable or voluntary group that has turned away a parent or child because of a lack of a diagnosis. Because with here, we operate under the National Health Service, and I know America, the system is different with a privatized health insurance scheme, but I think the waiting lists are roughly the same as from the first initial doctor's appointment to a confirmed diagnosis of autism. It's around maybe 18 months to 3 years, depending on the state. Is that right?
It depends on the location a lot.
Yeah, it does. I know the likes of a lot of the likes of New York or Pennsylvania. A lot of the waiting lists seem to be much higher, I believe, than would be maybe towards the central states. But I have never had a group say to me that no, you need a diagnosis to join this group, because a lot of parents have been in that same position where a lot of the time you're waiting at least over a year to get that diagnosis. And that serves two purposes. For parents, it's to meet other parents who are going through the same situation and learn from one another. But I suppose most importantly, it's for your child to meet other children like them and form relationships, and maybe that will help them not feel as different as like what I went through. So that would be my number one advice for parents out there.
Okay. And then in terms of parenting their children, what would be another piece of advice for them?
Well, I wouldn't call myself like a parenting or a child development expert, but I do sound like a broken record whenever I say nurture their passion, because that passion could be one day that leads them on a career path. Like my passion for reading and writing is leading me on a career path, and who knows, like a lot of people say that autistic people have obsessive or repetitive patterns of behavior, but that's not true. They are passions and special interests. and my special interests for reading and writing have got me to where I am. But whenever I, I talk to people, is that I know that a lot of parents do like advice in that, but I mean, what I want to do is raise a lot more awareness from the autistic point of view, because I don't know any other way to see the world, because being autistic governs all of my senses: sight, hearing, taste, touch, human interaction, and the other senses that nobody talks about, like acceleration, direction, and pain. But yeah, I mean, being autistic governs all of those things, and I just want to tell autistic people more than anything that things can be fine. Because whenever I was young, I even wondered myself, how will things be when I'm older? I can't live with my mother forever. I can't. I'm not going to be at school forever. I'm going to have to go out and earn my own money,
Mhm.
and it's something that I feel maybe a lot of parents don't consider a lot. That
Mhm.
autistic kids have the same feelings as what their parents do. We're not oblivious. We're more than aware, and it's then where those talents, those special interests that the outside world or the lay person would describe as obsessions, that's the time to nurture those things, and that could forge a career path and a living and another autistic success story for the world to marvel at.
Okay. And do you live with your mother now?
I don't. I have my own house. I have a mortgage. I have a car. I have a girlfriend. I have a son. I have a job. I have a book. I have speaking tours, hopefully, if the COVID disaster lifts.
Mhm.
But I wasn't always filled with hope in that way. I thought that I was just doomed to be different and just doomed to hide in the shadows until my time was up. But whenever I realized that, you know, I don't suffer from autism. I am blessed by autism. That my passion, my drive, my just kind of relentless pursuit of what I want in life, and I suppose at the start it bloomed from being a little bit childish because I wanted to prove everybody wrong. But whenever I dropped that mindset and just wanted to focus on my own goals for my own self-worth, a happy byproduct was that I happened to prove a lot of people wrong too. So I mean, it's been a very, very productive few years for me, and I have to say there is some regret too, because on the whole of it, I did spend 25 years of my life harboring a lot of scars that stay that from my childhood that existed deep into my adulthood, that were very difficult to kind of rid myself of. And I suppose it wasn't getting rid of them, it was viewing them in a different way, that they were obstacles towards the main goal, and kind of celebrating every victory is incredibly important. And for anybody that's having small victories, even tiny ones on a daily basis, celebrate every single one. I certainly wish I did.
Well, as you're describing that, I'm viewing it as a turning point that historically you had more challenge in believing in yourself. And then you came to a point where you could see yourself in a different way. Was there anything significant that happened in your life to create that turning point?
Well, with the turning point was really that question there, because whenever I left school, I was of the firm belief, as is too many people these days for my liking, I thought that being autistic was just something for wee children, and that it didn't affect big people like me. And how wrong was I? And I just thought that was something that I'd grown out of. I mean, I have a car and a girlfriend and a mortgage, and I'm a social worker, I'm a professional person.
Mhm.
And to me, in my mind, I grew out of being autistic because my societal conception of autism was that autistic people could not have these things. And a lot of kind of autism and neurodiversity advocates would say the same thing, is that it's a lot of people believe it's something that they grew out of. And I mean, I had left university and kind of had my life plan, so to speak. And whenever that changed, when I learned that Ethan was coming along, the quirks and charms of being autistic that I thought I left behind started to come back, and come back with a vengeance of a suppressed mind that kind of covered everything, so much so that I really struggled. Every day was different. It wasn't anything that I was used to before, to the point where Ethan could see my sadness and inquired to my mother as to why it was so.
Well, having a child changes everybody's life. You know, anybody who has a child, your life is different after that. So I'm sure that you could spend hours talking about what it's like to be a dad. But is there something significant that you would like to share with our listeners right now about that turning point in your life?
Well, at that turning point, I was still very much in denial about being autistic.
Mhm.
And what I wanted to do is that I wanted to go on a journey to accept and love myself for who I was, because I couldn't form a healthy and happy relationship with my son if he didn't get the authentic Jude Morrow experience, or as he calls me, daddy or dad. And I wanted to build that relationship with him. I wanted to be someone he could look up to. I didn't want to be someone that was cowering in a corner with denial. And acceptance from an early age is the most important thing, because I wouldn't want anybody to feel the feelings that I did as a teenager or earlier in my life as a young man. I wouldn't want anybody to feel that. And I know that a lot of your listeners, whether they're parents or teachers, at this moment, they're talking about autistic kids. I was one of those. And now I'm an autistic grown man with a kid of my own. And one day, those kids may be parents themselves. Believe it or not, because if someone said 20 years ago, oh, in 20 years' time, Jude Morrow was going to be a dad, my mother would laugh at them. But it happened. It does happen and will happen again. I promise. So keep that in mind. And I mean, my mother from an early age and whenever I was young always taught me independent living skills, be independent, do as much for myself as I could, take responsibility. And I think those things stood me in good stead for whenever I embarked on my professional career. And after Ethan was born, although I did struggle with it, I still maintained a lot of independence and strength, and I suppose some levels of happiness, because I did know that I'd come a long way, but it's something that's going to give a lot of food for thought. Um, Hopefully, in this discussion that we're having now, is that someday some of those kids may become parents themselves, and I suppose the preparation for adulthood is very, very important from the educational point of view and from the parental point of view, because I'm nearly at a stage in my life, right? I am 29 now. I was an autistic child for 17 years and 370 days. I counted the leap years that there were inside that time. So that's how long I was an autistic child. And the average life expectancy of a human being in Ireland at the minute, because I looked it up earlier today, is 77.4293 years. So I'm going to be a grown man longer than being an autistic child. And all your lovely parents and teachers, if biology goes the way that it should, at some stage those children will be without you and will need to learn to flourish and survive and live in the world. Like even my own mother, I'm sorry to say, she's a bit shorter and has a few more greys and is a little bit slower when she walks. And she is going through the lovely process of becoming a little old lady, and that's the way it is.
Mhm. But she has taught you along the way all of those skills that parents teach their children about becoming independent and responsible and contributing members of society.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that I suppose it's not really an unusual thing for parents of autistic children to teach them independent living skills. Let's face it, every parent does that. But whenever you have a child like me who reacts incredibly acutely to any form of change or any form of not having to lean on my mother, then that is very, very difficult, and it does require an individualized and personalized approach to achieve the best outcome for the child and for them to grow and progress at their own pace and speed.
Okay, wow.